But what works for the world cannot always or necessarily work for the Black community. There are things that are done in the Black community that have to be antithetical. It has to be for our community to survive. We have a sense of community amongst each other. That's why we refer to each other as brother or sister. It does not matter if we're on the street or we're in foreign cities. I saw a brother over here. I saw a sister over here. Excuse me, sister, how are you? Excuse me, brother, how are you? We are a community. So therefore, our mentality, the way we think, the way we do things has to be different. Our mindset has to shift. Our mindset has to be on what is great, what is the greater good of the community. And it's not always about money. In this chessboard game of life, everybody cannot be an king or queen or rook or knight or bishop. There has to be people on the front line. There has to be pawns in this game. Some of us that are pawns are in the educational sphere or in law enforcement or in the medical field. We need those people that are in those positions to help move the community forward. Those are the core structures that help maintain, and that's how you can create a Black Wall Street. That's how you can create a Rosewood. You need those types of things in place.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world when you receive this podcast. My name is Jabir McKnight, and I'm your host. And I'm excited for today's episode. We're going to do a deep dive into the current state and future of male achievement in America, especially for Black boys and men. We're seeing declining educational outcomes, emotional isolation, really across the board. We want to unpack the real story behind those numbers as we see it and what it looks like to rise above this system that we are currently in. Today's guests are absolutely amazing. They are a testament of when care meets strategy and what it looks like to be intentional. So I have two brothers here with me today, Anthony G. Stepney, who is my co-founder at the Dream Beacon Company, as well as the executive director of the Kappa Foundation, and much more. I'll give him time to tell his story. And then we have Dr. Bobby Rodgers Jr., doctor.
Yes, sir.
Veteran education,
Yes, sir.
a veteran elementary school teacher in South Central
Yes.
LA. And, you've been around for quite some time and you've been a part of my development. I think this is a important opportunity for us to have a cross-generational conversation about what we're facing and how we fix it.
Indeed.
So let's start with your stories. What brought you into this work and who are you fighting for? Like, why does this matter to you? We can start with Step and then we'll go to you, Doc.
I love it. Thank you, Jabir. Just an incredible opportunity once again. This work with Dream Beacon and all the other hats that I'm fortunate enough to wear are nothing short of a blessing. I started off maybe 35 plus years ago with the understanding that, it's essential that I find my purpose in life, define my purpose for myself, define my purpose despite of distractions and setbacks and all the things that were going on in the world. And in finding my purpose, I realized that my purpose was providing resources and opportunities for others to realize their purpose and their dream. And long story short, through all the travels and opportunities that I've received globally, nationally, locally, and beyond, I found myself right back at Lincoln University's where you and I connected. And I think our story is something that can be, let's call Ryan Coogler and we can, make this movie, man, because how we connected and what we've been able to do as a result of that relationship is nothing short of providential. And I can't wait to dive deep into how that happened. As far as RJ is concerned, we're college classmates and been great friends. We have a picture together from our commencement with his parents, and it's a classic.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about Mother Rodgers and Father Rodgers, but I never went to LA, and I probably go to LA at least twice a year. I've never gone to LA and not made time to go see Mother Rodgers. because she
Right.
was speaking about a beacon, she was such a beacon of light and hope and focus. She really, really kept us scripturally sound, held us
Yeah.
accountable. So I think that's where a lot of that comes from in terms of how we have shaped Dream Beacon and the work we do. We're big on accountability. We're certainly big on purpose. So without further ado, hey, let's turn it over to Dr. Bobby Rodgers Jr. and allow him to introduce himself, and we'll talk a little bit more about that pursuit a little bit later. Go right ahead, sir.
All right. First of all, good afternoon, gentlemen. I appreciate the time and opportunity coming on the show. And just to share a little bit about me, I am a product of the public school system. Attended HBCU, the oldest degree granting institution in America, African American institution in America. But I really had an epiphany once I got out of school and found out that my journey is going to take me to a different place. I was no longer going to be playing professional sports. That career was over. And my mother, who was an educator, and my father, they got together and they double teamed me, so to speak. As you know, if you know, something about Black mothers and sons, we are always trying to please them, not let them down. And if they ask you something, you're going to go ahead and do it, right? So my mother comes to me and asks me, son, would you be interested in taking the CBEST test and going down and teaching and, you know, and being a role model, being someone that kids can point to? And I said, nah, I don't think I want to be bothering anybody else's kids, Mom. I'm only 21 years old. Why would I want to get out and go corporate America, carry a briefcase and wear a suit and shirt and tie and go to work. And then she pulls me to the side and she says to me, and I can see it, it's like it happened yesterday. She's like, son, they need you. And it hit me. I'm like, no, you really did that to me. And she's like, you need to give these young men and these young ladies what your father gave you. Because there's no guarantee, because we're talking late 80s, early 90s, and you have a lot of, we're just coming out of and probably going really heavily into the crack epidemic, right? And so you didn't have a lot of moms and dads at home bringing kids to school, and they needed a role model. So I thought I'd do it for a couple of years and then get out. No, 32 years later, I was still in the field. But what led me to the research was I know for a fact that my story can't be the only story out there. My dissertation was on the shortage of African American male educators and how do we empower representation. And I wanted to find out from other African American male educators their story, and is their story comparable or much like mine? And if it is, then we have something that we can draw upon and then come up with some solutions to deal with Black males and deal with students who are not getting what they need in schools and not what they're getting at home as well.
So I want to pull on that thread. You started teaching in the 90s, right? You said fresh out of the
Yes.
crack epidemic, and then you recently retired in 2024, or was it 2023? So you went from fresh out of the crack epidemic to post-pandemic.
Yes.
It's a lot of layers there.
Yes.
There's also several recessions there as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what are some changes that you've seen and how boys have shown up across those decades?
From the time that I started, the school that I was a part of was predominantly African American, right? I had grandmothers raising loads and loads and loads of grandchildren because of the mothers that were involved in the crack epidemic, or they weren't necessarily having an emphasis on education the way past generations have had. Long about maybe the 2000s, the schools district kind of changed and went from predominantly African American to predominantly Latin American. And I've seen that wave of students and families come in. And so I got a 15, 16 years of dealing with African American kids and families. And then the last portion of my career dealing with predominantly Latin American families. It's been, the two are very, very similar, but very, very different in the fact that my Latin American families stayed together. Mother and father stayed together. There weren't a lot of single parent homes with my Latin American families, but with my African American families, I saw an abundance of single parent homes, and I saw an abundance of grandmothers and extended family having to pitch in to help these young people. And so with that, coupled with all the political things, the recessions and things of that nature, yeah, it was tough. And it was tough for families coming up in an area where you don't have a lot of resources. You don't have a lot of organizations to pitch in, or they'll pitch in for a minute and then they'll fade away and die out, leaving children to fend for themselves, leaving parents to fend for themselves. There's not a lot of funds that help or assist with supplies and things of that nature.
So how does that show up in the classroom? Like, I want to hone in on how they're showing up in the classroom, not necessarily the environmental factors, but in terms of preparation, in terms of performance, in terms of attitude, in terms of the small intangibles that you saw made students successful in the 90s, 2010s, 2020s. Like, what were those small differences where you're like, wow, there are some important ingredients that are falling through the cracks?
If I had to put my finger on it, the important ingredients start with the home. And you're not getting that in some of your homes in really rough neighborhoods, because there isn't a male figure in the home. And if you don't have that, that causes a problem. That becomes a problem, even a bigger problem for your males. But girls are also affected by not having male figures in the home. But like I said earlier, even with my Latin families, even though they do live in the same neighborhoods that the African American kids live in, they still had the mother and the father at home. There's still a hierarchy of accountability, so to speak. Whereas we didn't have that with my Black families, the majority of them.
Got it. And so shifting to you, Step, you have the opportunity to also work with, boys and men from various ages. And for a lot of the work that you're doing, seeing them grow, right? And across socioeconomic backgrounds as well. What are some common issues that you're seeing? And to pull on what Dr. Rodgers said, starting with at home, what are some common issues that you're seeing at home, regardless of socioeconomic background?
No, great point, Jabir, and thoroughly appreciate where you're coming from and your lens, Doc. When I think back, I'm going to go all the way back to, let's just go back to college, because this will resonate with a lot of our listeners. We graduated from college in 1990. If anybody will recall, this is key. I was blessed. I was a college president, so I was able to speak at commencement and do the charge for the class. And our honorary speaker was South African Bishop Desmond Tutu. Excuse me. So I'm thinking about that experience, and Bishop Desmond Tutu, if you recall, 1990, spring of 1990, they're just coming out of apartheid, right? And I remember my speech like it was yesterday. And unfortunately, I could give that same speech today and it would still be relevant. And I talked about the importance of our economic solidarity, the importance of recycling the dollars in our community as relates to other communities and how they recycle the dollar. How does that relate to this subject that we're talking about? It directly relates, because when we start talking about environmental sensitivity and we start talking about family dynamics and we start talking about some of those other key areas of successful Black men in the community, Black men in the school, in the school. I have a group of friends from high school that were in a text group. It's probably about 15 of us. And we all agree, hands down, we would not be on that text string today, and we would not be where we are in our careers if it had not been for those Black male educators that were in our high school, our middle school, elementary school, that really ushered us along. And I think the key word there was accountability. They had a way of holding us accountable in a way that other teachers could not. Sometimes it was a look, it was an eyebrow, it was a nod, it was a point, it was a I see you or I'll see you later, and you knew you had to straighten up your act, right? So as I go back on my career, 1990, I worked in corporate America. I left corporate America shortly after because, like you, RJ, I just felt this pull that my community needed me, right? It's great that I was in Philadelphia. I was making great money, but as God saw it, he said, no, this is cool, but I need you here. So when I went back to Baltimore, I started working with a couple different community-based organizations. And I started doing youth employment training. I started doing counseling services. I worked for the Urban League. I was blessed to work with one of my best friends and brothers today, John Jacob, who was the national president of the Urban League. And I worked at the Urban League in Baltimore under his leadership. He was national, but he actually started, believe it or not, in Baltimore years prior. Working in the Urban League during that time and directing programs, one program I worked with Dr. Kathleen Kennedy Townsend. She later went on to be lieutenant governor. I did a program that literally provided support to the middle schools because I realized this fragile phase, as you well know, RJ, is that 6th grade time period. And I knew that if we did not shape the direction or bend the direction of young men in 5th and 6th grade, the rest of their school careers would probably end up being not so productive, right? So it was a lot of environmental work. It was going into their homes. It was checking on them. It was providing resources. If you're having a rough day and you're in the classroom and you're a distraction, you're coming out of the classroom and you're coming with me. It was taking them to the museums on Fridays. It was cultural exposure. It was that accountability that I'm talking about. So literally, for my entire career moving forward, doing a lot of coaching, doing a lot of working with families, and really, really understanding the philanthropic side of where we need to go. I worked in policy research and systems, did a lot of program implementation, policy implementation for the state of Maryland. So I've seen it all, right? I've seen it from beginning to end and everything in the middle. And we still have a lot of work to do. And I think our saving grace is that we're doing this work today and we're recruiting and developing other young minds like yours, Jabir, to come in and help roll up the sleeves and address some of these issues that we're dealing with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there's some statistics floating out there quoting the New York Times as well as Richard Reeves' book of Boys and Men. 60% of college degrees now are going to boys are falling behind. What do you think is behind this crisis? And selfish plug, I'm going to go up first to answer this question.
Please.
Because I do think there's an intrinsic lack of motivation. And when I say that, I'm not blaming just the young men. I think we are in a space, and we see it across the board. It's just, male livelihood in general, where we're charged to believe that we just have to figure everything out on our own, right? And one of the things that you both said was the importance of having accountability partners and community. Yeah. Right? Women have intrinsic motivation to go to college and to have financial success due to the things that have occurred in the past, right? Whether, women weren't able to open up bank accounts or have credit cards until the 70s without a sign off, and so many other terrible things that occurred pre-civil rights and a little bit after that, right? So we understand that there's an intrinsic motivation there, and it's built into the DNA of so many organizations, and it's in the ethos of all of the conversations that we're seeing today. We don't have that same motivation. We have young men that are being taught by men that have come before them that the system of old is the system that is correct. And we're not going back to the system of old. Because to go back to the system of old is to disenfranchise women, right? We have to look to a future where we all can coexist and be successful. And I think it really starts with, we have to your point, both of your points, we have to reframe the minds of the support systems, not just the young men that we're talking about? What does it mean to be financially successful? What does it mean to be in partnership? Without you may not necessarily be the financial breadwinner.
Right.
Your support is not just purely what you can give financially. You have to challenge yourself to just be a good person. And people are scared to do that. I think that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Two, we're talking about some of our HBCUs. I apologize to anyone that may feel offended by this message, but I'm going to send it anyway. You know, we are afraid to have conversations about what equity truly means. One of the things that you said, Step, you know, we're talking about accountability, and I love that you broke down what accountability looks like. We have to stop intellectualizing terms and just saying things that sound good and break down what the tree looks like for these terms and how you show up and do it, right? When we talk about equity, can equity swing both ways, or is equity just the inequity of the past and we're trying to solve those things and then we're swinging the other way? We have young men that are going to HBCUs that are hanging on by a thread, right? That, you know, just escaping maybe inner city circumstances or, you know, different things that the world is sending them. And the difference between them staying to complete their degree, is it just representation, meaning that there's a black male on campus? What type of black men? Are they representing the background of the target audience that you're bringing into a university? How do they hold these young men accountable or say, hey, I know this is what you want to accomplish. I see you may not be doing it the right way. Let me sit you down and have this conversation. A lot of our universities are very women dominated, and the males that are brought in by the women that are dominating the administrative position are those that are not necessarily representative of the men that they're bringing into the university or that they want to attract. It's representative of the men that are going to continue to pour into the women that are there and are going to create and support the environment and the system that has been created. Let's talk about it. Why do you think it's hitting black boys especially hard? Anyone could go.
I'll go last.
know,
RJ, let's hear what you got to say. I got some thoughts, and I'm going to let you speak first.
you said 60% of the college graduates are women.
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 I did some homework and I found that less than 20% of the African American males are on campus at certain HBCUs. Collectively, even at HWIs, the figure is about 26%, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
African American males, young males, and possibly old ones too, they don't have a love for education anymore. There was a time period from 1854 to 1954, probably one of the darkest times in African American history. You're talking about Jim Crowism, right? You're talking about the springing up of HBCUs, the springing up of A&M colleges, vocational schools. You had a time period where we now had access to university because we couldn't go to HWIs. So we now have HBCUs to go to, and Black folks have had a desire always to be educated, and now we have the opportunity. But I believe that the love for education has waned considerably. So if there's no love for it, then I don't need to be in it. I don't see the benefit of it. Not only do we not have the love for it, but it has hindered us from growing. We can't grow as a people. We can't grow as a certain demographic as far as African American males are concerned, without it. We haven't found out a way to go around education. I had a thought earlier when you were talking about African American males and the young men, and a certain mentality that we have called the bag mentality. This bag mentality of just getting and hoarding and being selfish with the money, or the idea behind getting money, has taken away from what really matters in our community. In Leslie Fenwick's book, The Jim Crow's Pink Slip, she speaks to that period of Jim Crowism, to where you had the height of African American educators and professional people growing and thriving, despite the Jim Crow nonsense. Despite that, right? We've gotten away from that kind of desire. We've gotten away from that. And I think if we get back to that, and history can serve as a marker for us going forward, if we can get back to that, despite what's going on around us, then I think we can probably position ourselves in the future for a better life, better lifestyle, something that we can pass on to our young people.
Wow. I think, when I think about just this dynamic, the three of us, right, and our commonality, same institution, higher education, all come from similar backgrounds, same fraternity, same interests. We're about achievement. But for any and everybody who's watching this is what accountability can look like, right? Accountability does not have to be this penal thing. Accountability, I found that I thrive through accountability. Jabir has heard me say 1,000,001 times that the key to my success is frequency and proximity, right? The more I spend time with ultra successful men who come from the same background that I come from, and some that don't come from the same background, but the more I spend time with them and the closer I become to them, and then the more I open up those doors to bring Jabir into those relationships and expose him, that to me is a part of accountability. If you don't mind, RJ, I'll share, interaction. As you were winding up your incredible career as a teacher after 30 years, we would have those late night conversations. So what's next for you, Doc? Right? You're 50 some years old. You're still a young man. You're incredibly brilliant. You've got a legacy. So what's next? Do you retire and then go home and then do what? So the conversation then became, okay, well, what's next? And we thought through it, and you worked through it, and it was about, wait, I got a couple other hits left in me, and we start talking about the terminal degree. And happy to say that, that terminal degree has been, I applaud you for achieving it. 3 years it's been. Where did the time go, right?
Right.
And to have accomplished that and to focus on empowering representation, addressing the shortage of African American men in education, especially in the public school environment, for that to be your dissertation, to me is a full circle accountability moment, right? Because taking all of your experiences, again, frequency and proximity, wrapping it up into a dissertation, educational outputs, and then using it to bring in the next generation of teachers who will ultimately bring in more generations of teachers. To me, that's what accountability can look like. So I'll speak to accountability in my life. I was exposed to college when I was in preschool. My aunt was my 6th grade teacher, my mother's sister. My cousin, who was like another sister to my mother, she pledged Delta at Coppin State College. It was a teacher school at the time. And she would pick me up half day. And she would take me over to Coppin. It was only about 2 miles away. And I'd spend a half day on the campus with her and her sorors. And what that exposure did was it just drilled into my head that college was in my future. Preschool, right? To me, it's never too early to expose young people to college. But I think education has gotten a bad rap today because, to me, education was not about getting a job. It was about exploring curiosity. It was about gaining knowledge. It was about developing social capital. It was about understanding. I mean, for me to go to Lincoln, I learned so much just about our people and the different places that we could come from and how we were living in those places and how we showed up coming from those places. That was an education in and of itself. So just understanding that, and then having my cousin expose me to college at a very young age, I then understood in preschool what fraternities and sororities were. and how they were these social capital vehicles, that they were of like mind and they were doing service on the weekends. She would pick me up on Saturday. We'd go do Special Olympics. Accountability is coming in again, right? So that accountability really rolled through. To this day, she's living. She still holds me accountable. Unfortunately, my aunt passed, but up until the time she died, she would still hold me accountable to always be moving forward. What are you working on? What are you doing? This is my 6th grade teacher having this level of influence on me. So I think that's the thing that we have to start doing. When I read Richard Reeves and I listen to his work, he talks about something that you just touched on, Jabir. It's how we can have multiple thoughts at one time. I don't like or either. I like and. I like for, let's look at multiple thoughts, holding multiple thoughts simultaneously and looking at expansive. Supporting Black men and boys does not mean not supporting Black women and girls, right? We can all thrive. We can all move forward ahead because it's imperative. Who are these successful Black girls and women going to marry eventually if we don't invest in Black men and boys? But I think so for our young men, looking at education as a way to expand your horizons, to expose you. Jabir, we talked about your freshman year. We planned, hey, let's make sure we get that passport so we can do that study abroad a couple times. I remember RJ back in the early 90s, I was studying abroad. I was coming from China and we spent time, and this is when you were just getting the job in education, and we spent time together in LA. So really it's about exposure. It's about growing. It's about traveling. Education to me is not about a career or job. It's about education. It's about expanding the horizons and growing.
I love that. So I'm thinking about a conversation I had previously with Dr. LT, and she was talking about in Washington, D.C., a lot of the engineering pipelines that were created in the 90s, really separating students within like junior high and high schools to be on a different track for engineering, right? Or computer science, and how that level of separation was a fast track to financial success. And I want to pull on that thread that you said, Dr. Rodgers, right? Like that money mindset that we have that's lacking community. I want to hear both of your thoughts, because when you all were in college, you were there during that like first boom of Black men and women going into corporate America where these pipelines were created. So that mindset of I'm going to school to get a job started then. But now we have our media and our culture pushing fast money onto the youth earlier before we're able to develop. So now we have a double whammy, right? We have media and culture saying you need to have money to do these lavish things, and it's always in your face due to social media. But then you also have colleges and universities and adjacent boot camps that are focused on do this so you can get a job, not necessarily learn who you are so you can be a best fit for the work that you do. How do you think that kind of fits into this mindset that we have? Anyone could go.
I was going to say that the mindset of this bag mentality of getting it and hoarding it in any way you can, and it's pure capitalism, as you know. But what works for the world cannot always or necessarily work for the Black community. There are things that are done in the Black community that have to be antithetical. It has to be for our community to survive. We have a sense of community amongst each other. That's why we refer to each other as brother or sister. It does not matter if we're on the street or we're in foreign cities. I saw a brother over here. I saw a sister over here. Excuse me, sister, how are you? Excuse me, brother, how are you? We are a community. So therefore, our mentality, the way we think, the way we do things has to be different. Our mindset has to shift. Our mindset has to be on what is great, what is the greater good of the community. And it's not always about money. In this chessboard game of life, everybody cannot be an king or queen or rook or knight or bishop. There has to be people on the front line. There has to be pawns in this game. Some of us that are pawns are in the educational sphere or in law enforcement or in the medical field. We need those people that are in those positions to help move the community forward. Those are the core structures that help maintain, and that's how you can create a Black Wall Street. That's how you can create a Rosewood. You need those types of things in place. Now that it will allow you to have Black dollars in there, recycle all that money, create these communities where we were totally self-sufficient. And I just believe that we have to get back to that. Let's get back to that. Got to get back to that.
I think about, I was blessed to have a really large family and with a storied past. I think about my maternal great grandfather. He was a captain steward in the Navy, and he was able to take his money in Annapolis, Maryland, and buy homes. And I have those deeds and I have all that paperwork to this day right here in my office. And his story is one of the things that inspires me. Many of the men in my family were very entrepreneurial, hardworking. If they worked for someone, they were hardworking. And one of the things that I really want to share with my brothers today is study your craft. No matter what you choose to do in this world, study your craft. I talk to people sometimes and they want to go into music or they want to be an artist, and they don't even know what that means from an accountability standpoint. They don't know what it means from a credentialing standpoint. My thing is, whatever it is you want to do, study your craft. One of the things that I think about all the time is that the perception of success can be one of the greatest deterrents to one's progress, right? How we perceive success or how we define success sometimes can be the biggest deterrent to how we progress in our lives, how we can go on to the next level. Where I am today is not where I was when I was 21, 22 years old, right? I remember when I was and I worked at General Motors, and all my buddies and I worked at General Motors in the summer, and we would get those checks and be like, oh my gosh, right? Those things were huge. But we use that money to reinvest in ourselves to go on to do other things. It wasn't an end all be all. And what I see too often nowadays is lack of aspiration in a way that's productive, right? Give me an example. You want it all tomorrow, right? You want to have 15 different jobs. You want to be the CEO. You want to be the mogul, you want to be all the things. But if I peel back the layers, what work have you done to accomplish those things, right? Castles made of sand, right? And one of the things I really, really, really want people to think about is think about where we were. You mentioned, I'll go back a little bit. I think about affirmative action. So in the 60s, we had affirmative action. We had that first wave of folks who went through college after the Second World War. They went into corporate America. They got some of those great jobs. Then you had another wave that went through. Then you had the go-go 80s. We were going to Wall Street and we were making money then. And then the 90s hit, and then the 2000s, and then we had the dot-com era. We had these, as you mentioned, Jabir, we had these various pockets of success. But who are the people that stuck around, who survived, who thrived over the course of years? Those were the people who studied their craft, who were aspirational, who had the credentials, who had the things that would sustain them over time. And the biggest sustainer, I believe, is relationships, right? We are the average of the people we spend the most time with. So, eagles don't hang with turkeys, right?
No.
So if you choose not to pursue an education and you're hanging around guys around the way, hey, nothing wrong with the guys around the way, but do understand that you're going to be the average of those guys. You think, okay, I'm going to be the CEO or I'm going to be the mogul. No, you're going to be the average of all of those guys. So if you're going to be the CEO and the mogul, then you need to go hang out with some CEOs, because it's one thing to get it, but it's a whole different thing to maintain it.
Indeed.
Something that you said, Steph, and Dr. Rodgers, I think is a big connection point there, right? Your chess analogy, where you fit on the board, and then Steph, not just for the relationship portion, but the understanding of your craft. I think the other portion that's weaved into this entire conversation is your why. Why do you actually want these things? Do you actually really want to be a mogul?
What does that mean?
What does that mean? We have to give meanings to words, not the words and the definitions that you think they mean, not the ones that you've read in the Webster Dictionary. What do you think these words mean to you, and why do you want them? Do you want to be filthy rich? What is your life, your future state? What do you want that life to look like? Because 9 times out of 10, you don't need a mogul to do that. You could be a pharmacist and have that life.
Indeed. The word mogul sounds good.
Yeah.
It has sex appeal to it. But when you sit down and you have to put in the work and the time, you don't become an expert unless you've done 10,000 hours in that particular field, which usually takes you about 10 years. So long before you become a mogul, unless you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth or you got a trust fund where you can get a head start, you're starting from ground zero. As a matter of fact, if you are African American, you might be below ground zero because you got to have the credit to qualify to get the bank loan to put the idea in. Yeah. So you need to invest. And then what this microwave generation wants, they want it right now. No one wants to really take the time to put the effort in and do the work, and then understand that it may not go your way. Understand that I may have to go back to school and learn how to get an MBA or learn some concepts of business so that I can run a business. I can't run a business just, handing t-shirts on the corner. Pretty soon that's going to go out of style. That's going to be out of business with no time flat. You need to understand that if I'm going to run a t-shirt business, I need a computer because people don't have brick and mortar places anymore. I need to have inventory. I need to have a storage place. Those things aren't thought out.
That's the study of the craft.
It's great to go ahead and just have to sell t-shirts at the Whitney Hutton concert, right? Whitney Hutton, I don't know if you know who Whitney Hutton is.
I don't.
But I know Tony does.
Cool, man. Old school.
He'll tell you later. It's great to have those t-shirts and stuff like that. But if you're not putting together a menu of items, if you're not thinking what it looks like 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and you're only thinking in the right now, it will not be successful. It just doesn't have legs. You can't give it legs. And you got to spend time in the craft, like Tony said. You got to spend time reading books and reading what others have done and how others have failed, But like I said, with reading, requires time, and you got to sit down and take the time to do it. Plan it out, write it down, put it on paper, put it on a vision board. I don't think kids know what vision boards are. Right?
They to your point, we absolutely know what a vision board is. A lot of people do. It's just they may not know it in that terminology.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, how do we cross generations and understand what I know this generation knows? They just don't know it in the way that I know it. And there has to be a level of studying across generations to know, how do I meet this generation where they are? But to this one point, I think it's something that for our inner city kids that are listening, our suburban kids as well, and parents, there is a lot to be learned from those who are chasing their hoop dreams, right? Because the level of dedication, the level of almost, I wouldn't say social isolation, but during that period of metamorphosis where you're studying your craft, there's a lot of isolation. There's also a willingness not to just invest in your skill set, but you're investing in your body, you're investing in your hobbies, you're investing in a trainer. How do we build that framework out for everybody's career. What does that look like? We know those things exist. Your trainer is your mentor. Your trainer is your sponsor. The way that you eat is also important. The way that you sleep, that translate across fields. Studying your craft is reading. It's going to YouTube. It's going to TikTok. It's going to social media and using those things effectively, right? They
matter so much, Jabir. Let me put on my hats as a philanthropist, as a coach, as a teacher, as a program director, as an investor, as a corporate leader. A young person that comes to me seeking guidance, support, or investment, the young person that comes to me that shows me that they are consistent, that shows me that they are willing to invest in themselves and they've put some points on their own board, they have, ready for this, finished what they started in spite of the challenges. To me, that's somebody I'm willing to invest in. The three of us have gone to school. It wasn't easy for us, we know, but we finished. Beer finished undergrad. I finished. I've run in different programs. My PGA Master Professional. I'm at the top 1% of an industry that I could not legally have been a part of up until 1962. So out of 30,000 members, I'm in the top 1% of that 30,000. Why? Because I worked hard. And I decided that I was going to not just be happy coming in and being a part of it, but I wanted to be at the top. I wanted to be a decision maker for others, to open up the doors for others. RJ, you with your master's degree and now with your doctorate degree, right? We have all put points on the board and we finished what we started. I couldn't begin to tell you how many young people have come to me seeking guidance, seeking support, seeking investment, seeking whatever, and you look at their body of work and you never finish anything. And the one that really gets me is, and I'm going to step on some toes, but I'm just going to keep it real. Listen, I don't want to hear from your parents. I want to hear from you. Because if the parents are doing the speaking for the young person, then the young person is not doing it for the reasons that we say it. This is the parent living vicariously through the child.
That is loud.
Right?
Correct.
And we've always talked about in Dream Beacon how some of your biggest detractors or the biggest deterrents to your success can be those in closest proximity to you. That's very real. We all know that very well. So you have to decide. Sometimes going on your own a little bit and falling is probably more important than a parent or a loved one saving you all the time and speaking for you. So I think it just goes back to you raise great points, Jabir, and I think we just got to be real about this, man, and we've got to just take ownership. And I'm not trying to paint too broad of a brush, but I think it's a lot of accountability. It goes back to that very same theme. And we really need to think about what it means to be aspirational and how much are we willing to study our craft to get what we want.
Just to add to that, Anthony, Jabir said it and you said it also. It is the will of the individual. It is the desire of the individual. It is the understanding of delayed gratification and not knowing or not understanding or not wanting it too fast, because there's layers to becoming successful. Because if it comes fast, it's going to go fast. So take the time, find the mentorship, find the one that has done it and done it well. Learn from that person, learn from the mistakes, and then begin to craft your thing, put it together, and then move forward. And understand it's going to take time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen in the next 2 years. It's going to take some time if it's going to have any kind of foundational strength to it, right? And if it doesn't have the strength to it, it's coming down. And then you'll be trying something else in 2 more years, and something else 2 more years after that. So when I speak about that vision board thing, put up on the vision board failure as well. You need to do that. You need to understand that failure is going to be part of the game. When you play chess, You don't get all the pieces that you started out with at the end of the game. There's some people that are going to take a hit. You're going to take a hit too. But the idea of coming back the next time, coming back, you know what? I tried that. I'm not going to try this. That didn't work for me. This worked for me. He said this worked. I read this in this book. I read this in this classroom. This instructor told me this. So now you're pulling from all these different resources. You're creating a wider platform. And by the time you look up 10 years down the line, you now can be an expert. You now can be someone that we can call on that can give us the opinion that is needed for this particular situation. It's got to happen that way. It's slow. It's a slow burn. And take the slow burn.
I want to pull on that. Hold on, I want to pull on that.
Okay.
Step. I think what I'm hearing is, and it goes back to that earlier point, you have to be a student for the love of the game.
You gotta love
for the love of the game, for the knowledge, and you have to know, hey, I do it. And I want to talk about mentorship and, how mentorship changed your life, both of your lives, and, what that turning point was. But I know all of the relationships that I have, and especially, with you, Step, there's a level of, let me sit down and understand how this game is played.
Yes.
And just because I figure out how it's played at one level doesn't mean I know everything. Now I mastered that. Don't assume that just because you have people that are supporting you, that are sponsoring you, that are mentoring you, mean they just taught you everything that you knew. They waiting for you to get through the modules. You have to complete some steps before they realize, okay, we're going to play you at a higher level now. But there's a level of communication that has to be done. There's a level of self-determination that has to be there. We heard that. Communicating that you completed the things, completed the things that you said you were going to do. And you learned the lessons. You have to communicate what those lessons are. It's not good enough to just know that you did it. What are the lessons that you learned? So I know if I introduce you to this other person, if I put you in position, you're not going to make a silly mistake. I know that you made that mistake already. These are important things. Good.
This is the power of frequency and proximity, right? We begin to complete each other's sentences, or we begin to read each other's minds. I mean, literally, as you did that transition, I was thinking of two key things, and hearing you, RJ, and hearing what your intro was just now, Jabir, I thought about, accountability. We have to seek accountability. I keep saying it, but in the context of what you just said, if you're not seeking accountability as a young Black man in this society, if you're not seeking someone that's going to hold you accountable to a standard, you are kidding yourself, right? Because accountability is the thing. I want you both to think about something. Think about when you may have had a mentor or an accountability partner, and that person really hurt your feelings because they told you the truth that you needed to hear at that time. Has that happened to either one of you? That chicken gut?
That's called pruning.
Talk to us about pruning. What does that mean?
Pruning is what someone who loves and cares about you does to you so that you become a better person. You talked about mentorship earlier. I just had to write it down so I don't forget it. Mentorship, even and role modeling go hand in hand. The two are mutually inclusive, right? But we want to understand mentorship from the aspect that mentorship is a more intimate relationship between mentor and mentee. Mentorship also has another dynamic to it, and I spoke about it in my dissertation, called other fathering, where young men are seeking the other fathers from African-American males that are doing things. And these other fathers sow into these young men's lives the idea of life skills, what to expect on the other side, what to expect as you being a man. And it's not going to feel good. It's not going to feel good getting the door slammed in your face. It's not going to feel good when you get the bad grade and you got to come back the next time and show the professor or show the teacher that you can do the work. It's not going to feel good. I am there to support you. I am there to let you know that as a man, we're not going to wear our hair this kind of way. We're not going to wear our pants this kind of way. This is the pruning that goes on that's needed so that we can generate the next group of thoroughly put together, talented 10th counter brothers. And we need to do that. And it takes the pruning. And it takes the young men, huh?
Just because you can doesn't always mean you should. Just because you
There you
can't
go.
wear your clothes or your hair or whatever, how you choose. I don't judge that. But just
No.
because you can doesn't always mean you should. If you are truly connected to your craft or wanting to achieve the thing you want to achieve, as RJ just said, sometimes you got to deny yourself that thing in order to advance to the next thing. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. There's a good friend of mine. He and I always have conversations. Love his brother. He always says, you want to remain relevant. You want to remain relevant. Number two, you want people to take you seriously. So if there's a standard, then meet the standard.
Exceed it.
Don't show up any old kind of way to the job. Don't show up any old kind of way to the church. Don't show up any old kind of way to the restaurant or to the dinner party, whatever. Set the standard, elevate yourself. If you don't know how to do that, I'm $2.50 an hour. I'll help you. I ain't got no problem. I ain't got no problem. I'm an image consultant. I'll take care of you. But all jokes aside, we have to get back to that as African American males.
That's the aspirational piece that I'm talking about, right? What did it mean for us as a community when we were aspirational? When we were aspirational, let's say, RJ, your mom and dad in college, I'm going to use them as an example, and let's just say, times were tough, but they may have had $3 between the two of them. Well, if mom had $3, then dad had $3, and they had $3 together, and they made it work, right? Because they were working towards something together. It wasn't well. And my daughter asked me this. She said, when did it all change? And we were looking at my wardrobe, and she was asking me questions about, shoes and clothes and tailoring and imaging. And I had to sit down and really think about her question. And it hit me in my mind. I could be wrong, but I thought about when we were aspirational and how we worked together. But then as we started off this conversation, the substances came into our community, and the young lady who may have been going to college, I'm not blaming anybody here, this is just an example, but she may have been going to college and she may have been hanging out with RJ. They were working on their degree together, but then the drug dealer comes in and says, hey, I'll take you and your girlfriends out for dinner this weekend, and I'll pay for you to get your hair done and your nails done. And she was like, bet, right? You don't want to listen to me. You can, what is it? The Kimba, what is the story that was in Emerge magazine? Kimba, I can't think of her last name, but she was a quintessential story. She ended up going to federal prison. Now she's out, and I follow her on social media, and she can tell that story better than I ever could. There were predators who went to college campuses seeking those aspirational women, and needed them to count their money and manage their drug businesses, right? Those young women turned their attention away from the young dude that was in school with them, struggling with them, and decided that's the way I'm going to go. And that changed a whole different dynamic. Then the young men began to emulate the guys who were paying the bills. So that culture changed. I remember, if you were our age and you thought about Virginia Beach in the late 80s, right? That's where it was on full display. So I'm not making it up. I'm just reciting, the historical significance of what we saw and how we saw that transition happen. So come full circle, it's probably the same game being played, but just looks a little different, but it's the same thing. And I really think if we're going to change the dynamic and change the trajectory, we've got to really think long and hard. How is all of this going to impact us financially, collectively, and what does it mean for our families, and what does it mean for the next generation of young people that's going to be leading us?
I love that. I mean, I one of the things that I'm hearing, we just have to reformat first and foremost on, what does the future look like for the community if things continue to excel, best and worst case scenario, things continue to move in this direction. What is a modern family, no pun intended, look like today? there's aspects of the traditional family that's there, but we have to be honest about the economy that we're in, the financial situation. There are many cities today where women out earn men.
Yes.
Today, right?
Yes.
And we're talking about Black men, and that's absolutely the case.
Exactly.
And we have to get really in tune with what the data is for this current generation. One of the things that I want to mention, and I've had conversations, with so many different people about this, we have conversations about the divide in earnings, right? And we also have a conversation about what it looks like in terms of corporate leadership, the divide between Black men and Black women. And oftentimes what I'm seeing is the conversation is not adjusted, or the data is not adjusted for multiple generations. We're just collectively looking at the entire grouping of those who are currently in the workforce. But I can tell you, if you are 1 to 10 years into your career, it does not look the same as someone that's 15 to 30 years in their career. If I show up to a happy hour, a corporate happy hour, and let's say 10 random people, we just pull together 10 random people, I guarantee you there'll be an early to mid-career phase. There are going to be more women there than men. There are going to be more Black women there than men. And if you even categorize it by, to your point, Step, we're not talking about, because I want to add this disclaimer, if we're talking about heterosexuals, it's even shorter.
Sure.
Yeah.
Might be, if it's a group of 10, it might be half a person.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're having conversations about what the family dynamic looks like, we have to have real conversations about what's the state of our community, right? That's one. And then two, how do we reframe our personal thinking and how we go after these new careers? That's what I'm hearing from you all, starting with why and making the connections between why we want to accomplish the things that we want to accomplish, and have our colleges and universities and HBCUs champion those coalitions across the board. I'm seeing a lot of task forces that are focused on engaging with people far after the development has set in.
Right.
You can't have a conversation in 9th grade.
No.
Yeah. It's too late.
No, I don't think that is the route to go. I mean, in listening to Richard Reeves, and I know you mentioned things in high school and things of that nature. Now, I disagree. I believe that you need to start in elementary school. If you don't start, Stepney got exposed in pre-kindergarten, preschool, nursery school. If you don't take the time to expose your young people, whether it be in your family, whether they be in your elementary school, to education or those things that are available to them in elementary school, then you're doing them a disservice. There's nothing wrong with the high school development and the pipeline from that. I think that's a last-ditch effort. But I do believe, going back to the Black family, there are routes that speak to me, and one is the academic route, which is not for everybody. I get that. I understand that. But there also must be education pushed in the vocational route, and more so than for our girls, because our girls are doing well. The educational system is geared for the auditory learner. Boys and men, we're not auditory. We're visual, we're kinesthetic, more so than we are auditory. So we need those things to help offset what is being done for the ladies in the academic world. When I was in middle school, I took wood shop, electrical shop, there was plumbing, there were the industrial arts. They made that available for the boys. And you would see nothing but boys in those classrooms. Now, you don't have those anymore. My dad and my godfather, these men went to technical high school. My father went to technical high school in Detroit, Cass Tech. I don't know if you know anybody from Detroit. Anybody that went to Detroit?
I've been
Cass Tech.
I've been there.
You've been there. There's a Polytech in Philly. So these technical high schools are hands-on high schools where young men can go. I think the percentages of them graduating from tech high schools is far greater than it is at a more traditional high school. At the Cass Tech school where my father went, he learned how to do drafting. His entire high school career, his last semester, he spent in LA at Manual Arts High School, arts, right? He learned to build a home. He learned how to wire a home. He learned how to do plumbing, working with his hands. When I came out of Lincoln University, he told me, he said, hey, son, I really think you should go down to trade tech, right? Go down to trade tech, LA Trade Tech, and learn a skill. Learn how to work with your hands so you can always feed your family just in case you don't want to go into education. We need to make those kinds of things and those tracks available. We need to identify those early on. If we can see that our son may be lagging a little bit, okay, then you're going to go the vocational route, son. We're going to work with your hands. If he's an academic, he's a brain, he's a brilliant teen, then we're going to push him the academic route. We're not going to shove it down his throat and then give him all the negative school experiences so now he just hates being in school. And then with the idea of the public education being 85% white and female, who really doesn't, she may not really care about him the way his mama would, then he's going to have a reluctance to be in her classroom. He doesn't want to do that. So I'm thinking that the Black family is the route that we have to go, pushing academics, pushing vocations. And then from there, I think we can get to a point where we can build this community thing and get it on the right track. Then we can be self-sufficient.
I love that you said that. The thing that came to my mind, I know there's a lot of stats about this this coming transfer of wealth in middle America and those real blue collar jobs, because a lot of older Americans own a lot of these plumbing and electrical businesses, and they'll be looking to sell them off soon. And I think one of the things that you said is, I truly believe that success is, and it's true to our My Career GPS, success is a snowball effect. And the love of education is also a snowball effect of setting a goal and finishing the job and saying, wow, I did that.
And
you could always have
me. And nobody can ever take that from me because I accomplished it. That's just something that is so powerful. You got a degree or certificate. You earned it and it's yours.
So my thing is, you could get that vocational degree, build that skill set, and then in your mind, it's like, okay, now you go and get an MBA because you want to own the business.
And you want to be an HVAC and you want to own 17 different HVAC companies and be a supplier to the industry. Exactly. So then it becomes a business on top of a business.
It's relevant.
I'd be remiss if I did not mention something that I'm fortunate enough to be able to fund through the Capital Foundation, which is our GuideWrite initiative. Dr. Rodgers did write about GuideWrite in the Kaplan Journal. I'll let him talk about that. But we've been collaborating, and through what I'm able to do with GuideWrite, we have it's our youth development program that focuses on education and career development. We've got over 10,000 young men and boys in this program right now, right? And of that, there's 199 different programs in the country, almost 200, but 99% high school graduation rate, and about 78 to 80% of those individuals will graduate from college within 6 years after high school graduation. So there's other incredible statistics, and I just believe that we have been on to something for many, many years now. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We are the byproduct of it. We are the living example of it. And what's more important is that each of us, in our own way, are investing back into the next generation of young people and helping to bring them forward. That's commendable.
In addition, just to piggyback on what Anthony said about GuideWrite and the article that I was so fortunate to write with the other Dr. Rodgers, she and I put together some things, and we talked about the achievement gap and how do we close this. And GuideWrite was a way to look at some things. Not only is it the achievement gap, it's the discipline gap, it's the gender gap, it's the excellence gap. All these different gaps are dividing African American boys from every other demographic. And we're the only ones that are not reaping the benefits, that are not working toward narrowing that gap. And talking with a good friend of mine who's also a former educator, and we had the discussion all the time about how the African American young male, the student, is always in last place.
Mm.
He is never in a position to where he leans into the challenge, takes it head on, right? He's always in last place, whether it be because of external factors outside of his control, or whether he doesn't have the mentorship of the things that are in his control. He is in last place, and we got to do something about that. And Guide Writers is definitely a great program that we're a part of.
And I've been fortunate enough to meet so many incredible young men I've seen 4.5, 5.0 GPAs. I've seen young men that have started college that are already technically sophomores because they spent, their high school
AP.
senior year doing AP courses. And I just really think that, there's something to it. And I think we need to replicate it and take a peek. One other thing I don't want to leave on the cutting room floor, Jabir, you mentioned something earlier about earning. And I think it's so important for us as men to redefine success in relationships and not define it merely on how much you earn relative to what your partner earns. Because to me, it's a zero-sum game, right? It's, oh, well, she earns more, and she earns more than me, so we're losing. Well, who says that, right? And to be a man, to be a responsible man in a relationship does not mean you just earn more. There's so much more that goes along with that. Are you a leader in the home? Are you the spiritual head of the household? Are you guiding? Are you inspiring? Are you providing safety and comfort? If there's children, are you being an example to the children? Is so many different dynamics that are associated with that other than what we've defined as success is what you earn. Because I know countless people who've earned a whole heck of a lot of money and their relationships were horrible and they didn't last. So we just have to redefine that.
Just to piggyback on what Anthony said, there's a term I heard from a radio pastor, and I heard him talk about it, that the term husband really means house bond. The house bond is a characteristic of the male in the home. He bonds the house. He is the head of the house. He is the one that is responsible for all the things that are in the house. So if that's the child's education, the child's medical and dental, and their food and clothing and shelter, he bonds the house. Now the wife makes it a home, but he is the house bond. Look it up. I'm trying to tell you, I'm not preaching, but I'm just trying to let you know that the house bond is our role. And we have to assume that role. We don't assume that role in our own communities. And that's why, a major reason why our communities are not doing or putting out the type of young men that we need to see to push this thing forward. We're always going to be a threat to society. We have to know that. But what we do need to have happen is that we need to make sure that we have home together, that we bond our houses.
I love that. So, question, if you both could redesign the public school system and higher education system with the success of Black boys and men in mind, what's the first thing you change?
I'd have to change, I want to say it correctly, I'd have to change the accessibility to role models and mentors. That is the key to it, because if I don't see it, then I can't project to be it. If I can't see an African-American college professor who's advocating for me, who's providing agency for me, then I don't have the strength enough to go on, because who's in my corner? I don't have a cut man in my corner. I need somebody who's going to be there. If I'm in elementary school and I know I got Mr. Rodgers as my teacher, I'm going to be okay. He's going to be hard on me. He's not going to let me slide, but I'm going to be okay. I'm going to enjoy being in his class. I don't care how difficult it is. And how I know that is I had the testimonies come back to me.
Yes.
They said, thank you. Thank you. As a matter of fact, I was up late night doing some work, and I happened to just text a young man, let him know how I was doing and things of that nature. He says, "I think about you all the time. I think about you all the time." Not only him, but another young lady. She said, "Mr. Rodgers, there's something that you did for us, and I appreciate you so much. We didn't know it at the time, but we know it now." So it's the impact of the role modeling and the mentorship that be the first thing I change in public education and in higher ed. The visibility of that is needed because now I'm able to see that is what I can be. That's what I can become. That is what I can do. He's here to help me, guide me through my experience, guide me through trials and tribulations and things of that nature. And now I know I can see success. I can see Black academic excellence. I can be a part of that.
I'm inspired, Dr. Rodgers. I'm ready to run through some walls, man. You know,
Man,
what I took from what I heard you say is, we have to fall in love with accountability. It goes back to frequency and proximity. It goes to expectations, right? And there's so many things that are baked into that. Be willing to get your feelings hurt through your mentor or your accountability partner, because that's the pruning, right? That's helping you become a better person. What would I do to change? Fortunately, and happy to say, through the work that we're doing collectively, us, the three of us, with the Dream Beacon Company and where we're going, we're calling it Life Beacon, or we're calling it, the various segments of our career development from middle school all the way up to pre-retirement. We're touching on all those areas. But I think, it's going to be critically important that we incorporate industry and into the educational system more so. Right now, they're separate, right? I would love to see industry adopt schools in the community and provide needed resources, needed thought leadership, needed volunteerism, bringing the employees, let's say it's a hospital, let's say it's a service center, let's say it's a manufacturing facility, let's say it's entrepreneurs, bringing those individuals into the school, as well as bringing the individuals from the school back into the industry. One of the things that I really want us to work on with Dream Beacon is to create a senior fellows initiative. When I look at a lot of schools, certainly HBCUs, I find that individuals may have been in the classroom for 20, 30 years and haven't seen industry. My senior year at Lincoln was incredible because I had a Black Executive Exchange program, a professor who was on loan from IBM, and she taught me all of my senior classes, senior seminar and a number of different classes, and she gave it to us real. She gave it to us fresh out of industry. What was going on at IBM is what was being taught in that classroom. I would love for us to create a senior fellows initiative whereby we can take a young professor out of the classroom for a semester or for a summer. You work in industry, you get the latest and greatest, and then you take it back and you restructure your curriculum, restructure your teaching methodologies to speak to what's happening real time in that industry. I believe that that's going to be current. It's going to be relevant. It's going to spark interest and passion in young people to encourage them to want to pursue their education. So those are the types of things I would first do to change and modify and improve education today. And that's K through 12. That's not just on the college level. I think that should start in preschool and go all the way forward into college and graduate school.
Groundbreaker. I love both of those. So my last question for folks listening today, what's one thing they can do to support Black boys in their own communities? Starting today.
As you frame that question, the first thing that popped in my head was give them opportunity. Just give them opportunity. Don't shut him down because he looks a certain way or you think that he may respond a certain way. Give him the opportunity to show you that he can do the job or he can do the work or he can become all that he can be. Give him the opportunity to prove to you that he's worth it. And I believe if given the opportunity, you'll find that these young men won't let you down. They won't disappoint. They just need someone to give them opportunity and believe in them. And if you do that, I think you have a different young man. I think we'll position ourselves in a way where this in the future could be very, very bright for us.
Thank you so much.
What would be the one thing that any and everyone can do? It comes down to an old saying I heard. In our community, we have a tendency to love our sons and raise our daughters. And we raise our daughters to be self-sufficient. We raise our daughters to be responsible. We give them the skills that they need to survive, because sometimes it's said, you don't need a man. So I'm going to raise you so that you can be self-sufficient. So we love our sons. We raise our daughters. He's so special, and you just love him, and you never force him to be self-sustained or accountable. The number one thing that anyone can do to love and develop a Black male is to hold him accountable. Hold him accountable. And I believe that accountability with love, accountability with equal amount of support, right? And providing resources can go a long way. I know for a fact that all three of us in our lives had a deep level of accountability, which allowed us to be where we are today. And we probably know a few people that have never been held accountable that aren't doing so well. And they're probably much smarter than we are combined on this call, but they just have not been held accountable to the point where they were allowed to flourish through that accountability.
You know, just to add one other thing to that accountability piece, that once you start holding these boys accountable, then he understands how to be accountable to himself.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And then so now he can go 3,000 miles away from home to college and know, I got to get my work done. Mom's not here, dad's not here, granny's not here, auntie's not here. It's on me to get it done. Holds himself accountable. I like that, Tony.
My grandfather one time, I remember when personal story I'll share, when I moved back from Philadelphia, this was early 90s, moved back from Philadelphia, moved back to Baltimore, was staying with my grandparents for a couple of years, trying to figure some things out. And tough time. It was a tough economic time. If you recall, we were in a recession. Nobody was hiring. The news was just horrible. And I would, sleep in and, started feeling sorry for myself. And my grandfather was just a mild-mannered but very strong individual. He was just an incredible man. And he came in one morning. He sat on the side of the bed. He said, "Son, how you doing?" I said, "I'm all right, Pop, struggling." He said, "Well, here's the deal, buddy. I want you to get up out of this bed every morning. Your breakfast will be on the table. Your lunch will be made. There'll be money for you to catch the bus. I want you to leave in the morning and do not come back until the evening. I hope that you're looking, but I don't care what you do, but you're not going to lay around the house all day." Indeed. And I'm happy to say I have not slowed down since. That was the accountability and the expectation that I needed to be the kick in the pants, to not feel sorry for myself, to not say, "Oh, woe is me. Oh, but the man. Oh, but this. Oh, but all the..." Listen, if it is to be, it is up to who? Me. I had to take ownership for my own development, and believe it or not, there you go, frequency and proximity. The more I went out and the more I connected with people, the more resources and opportunities came my way, and the rest is history. So I think, yes, we're living in some precarious times. I don't deny that. I'm not ignoring it. However, we've seen worse.
Yeah.
And we can overcome if we just keep on staying accountable to one another, and we keep pushing one another with love and respect.
Well, I think everything that you all shared today has been absolutely amazing. The one thing that, I want to share with the audience is that we know that there's power in data, right?
Yeah.
But there's also power in our voice. And I think today we heard both. We built off of data. We shared our experience, generational perspectives, and I think that's extremely important. And for our listener, whether you're a parent or a policymaker or just someone who cares, an ally, this is your invitation to rethink how we show up for boys, more specifically Black boys. Because when we invest in Black boys, we don't just change their lives, but we change all of our lives and we change the greater community. So as always, I do hope that this conversation sparked a new idea within you. Thank you for
And I
joining.
say one more thing, Jabir, and I think I speak for RJ when I say how proud of you we are. When I think about you at 27, and we've known each other now for 10 years, when I look at how you've taken so many different threads of information and relationships and how you show up in different places, you and I have been to some places, brother, and how you show up in those places and how you take full advantage of every resource and opportunity that's been afforded to you. And it's not a thing where you're doing what other people want you to do. You're taking it all in and you're adding your own flavor to it, and you're adding it to your vision, and you're taking it and you're running with it. Dude, that's what this thing is all about, man. And you do it better than I've ever seen anybody do it. So kudos to you. I cannot tell you how much I love and appreciate you, and keep on doing. I cannot wait to see what's next.
Let's keep pushing.
Jabir,
Go ahead, Don.
the only thing I want to say, because I've talked enough today. Yo, noob. You
Yes,
did your
sir.
thing. You did your thing. I loved it. Loved it.